Ellen G. White and James White were co-founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and partners in every sense, in faith, in mission, and in marriage. To their followers, they presented a united front, tirelessly spreading their message. But behind the scenes, even this inspirational couple faced intense marital strains. Over the years, periods of conflict and physical separation led to whispers and rumors. Had the Whites grown apart? Had they even secretly divorced? What follows is a deep dive into those turbulent episodes, drawn from their own letters and the observations of those around them. In their youth, James and Ellen's marriage was forged in adversity and shared purpose. They married in 1846 and for decades labored side by side, raising a family and building a movement. James once publicly declared that from the day of their wedding, Ellen had been his crown of rejoicing. Together they endured poverty, relentless travel, and even the loss of 2 sons. Yet through all these trials, their love and common mission held them together as a dynamic team. However, as the years progressed, stress and illness began to take a toll. By the 1870s, James's health was broken by multiple strokes, which altered his personality and magnified his natural forcefulness into bouts of irritability and depression. Ellen, meanwhile, carried the heavy burden of prophetic ministry, often traveling or writing for weeks on end. The once inseparable couple found themselves pulled in different directions by duty and circumstance. Their letters from this period reveal frank frustration, hurt, and longing, providing a candid window into a marriage under immense pressure. Spring, 1876, Oakland, California. James, aged 54, and Ellen, aged 48, are staying in their West Coast home near the new Pacific Press publishing house. James, recently elected again as General Conference President, insists Ellen accompany him back east for important meetings and a summer of camp meeting preaching. Ellen, deep into writing a book on the life of Christ with the help of a literary assistant, feels compelled to stay in California to finish God's work assigned to her. Neither is willing to yield. A clash of duty versus duty, husband's plans versus wife's calling. What had been a united front cracks under the strain. Facing mounting marital strain, Ellen poured out her heart in letters. In April 1876, after James left for Battle Creek without her, she wrote to him almost daily. These letters start out calm, but soon betray tension.
You are in the line of duty. God blesses you. I am in the line of my duty, and God blesses me,
she assured him on April 20th, yet she pointedly added,
Should I leave now to go east, I should go on your light, not on mine.
Such words, emphasizing her independent conviction, stung James. By May, the polite veneer had worn off. James accused Ellen of unwarranted independence, while she bristled at his attempts to direct her work. In a letter dated May 12, 1876, Ellen defended her stance unequivocally.
In regard to my independence, I have had no more than I should have. I do not receive your views or interpretation of my feelings on this matter. I understand myself much better than you understand me.
Her words are respectful but resolute, a clear message that she would not simply bow to her husband's will when she felt God had given her a different course. By this point, emotional wounds were opening. Ellen confided in her close friend and assistant, Lucinda Hall. In one private letter, which she later begged Lucinda to burn, Ellen admitted,
I have not lost my love for my husband, but I cannot explain things.
She spoke of dreading James's changeable moods, a reference to her husband's sudden swings of temperament after his strokes. These unguarded words, never meant for public eyes, reveal Ellen's heartbreak and confusion. She loved James deeply, but his erratic behavior had become painful and perplexing for her. The very man who had been her rock was now, at times, the source of her greatest anxiety. This was not a divorce on paper, but it was certainly a separation of hearts for a time, explains one Adventist historian. By 1876, James and Ellen White had separated, living and working apart, due to what one might call temporarily irreconcilable differences. Each was convinced they were following duty, and neither could see eye to eye with the other. Indeed, contemporaries took notice. Many church members knew the Whites were in different states that spring. Some close colleagues sensed the friction. To them, the once unbreakable team now appeared profoundly at odds, if only for a season. Alone in Battle Creek, James's letters crackled with anger and hurt. He was a proud man, unused to opposition, even from his wife. In one particularly blunt letter, James lashed out at Ellen's counsel.
I shall use the good old head God gave me until he reveals that I am wrong. Your head won't fit my shoulders. Keep it where it belongs and don't waste your precious time and strength in lecturing me on matters of mere opinions.
The biting sarcasm, "Your head won't fit my shoulders," showed James's frustration boiling over. He felt Ellen, and perhaps those around her, were trying to control him. Such language was a far cry from the affectionate partnership they displayed in public. It's easy to imagine how much these words must have wounded Ellen when she received them. For perhaps the first time in their 30-year marriage, James and Ellen White were estranged, emotionally and geographically. James remained in the East nursing grievances. Ellen stayed in the West nursing her hurt. Letters became their only dialogue, and those letters grew so contentious that Ellen broke off correspondence for a short while. On May 17th, 1876, she wrote remorsefully to Lucinda,
I am sorry I wrote you the letters I have. Burn all my letters, and I will relate no matters that perplex me to you. Silence in all things of a disagreeable or perplexing character has ever been a blessing to me.
Clearly, she feared the dark feelings she had put to paper, and wished she could take back her bitter words. Thankfully, Lucinda did not burn those letters, and they survived to inform us of this drama. With communication strained and their lives on separate tracks, rumours naturally began to swirl among their friends. Were James and Ellen going to split for good? At least one colleague, Uriah Smith, later hinted that church members were aware of the situation in the White family and watched anxiously as the conflict played out. We can picture hushed conversations in Battle Creek and Oakland as people wondered if the prophetess and the president could patch things up. So despite talk of irreconcilable differences, reconciliation came surprisingly swiftly. After a few weeks apart, both James and Ellen began to reconsider. Ellen's stern letter of May 12th was followed by a softer tone. By May 16th, 1876, her heart was aching for peace, and she sent James a humble conciliatory letter. Grieves me that I have said or written anything to grieve you. Forgive me, and I will be cautious not to start any subject to annoy and distress you. We cannot afford to have in our old age differences to separate our feelings. I may not view all things as you do, but it would not be my place or duty to try to make you see and feel as I feel. Wherein I have done this, I am sorry. In this poignant apology, we hear Ellen's genuine sorrow. She pleads for unity in our old age and vows not to let disagreements separate our feelings. She even relinquishes her urge to persuade him, essentially saying, I won't push you anymore. Please forgive me. It's a touching moment of vulnerability and self-reflection. I want a humble heart, a meek and quiet spirit, she wrote, admitting her own faults and her desire to be more Christ-like in patience. This letter was a turning point. James, proud as he was, could not resist such a heartfelt olive branch. Within about 10 days, Ellen boarded a train east to reunite with her husband. By the end of May 1876, the Whites stood side by side at a camp meeting in Kansas, resuming their public ministry as a team. Those who saw them on the speaker's platform that summer might never have guessed the turmoil that had just transpired. The couple labored through 14 camp meetings in 1876, and by all outward accounts, the breach was healed. In a private letter a year later, their son Willie learned just how deeply this episode had affected his parents. Your father seems to feel that he has wronged me very much, Ellen confided to Willie in late 1877. He goes back to the letters he wrote me. He feels that he has committed a great sin that the Lord can hardly forgive. James was racked with guilt over his harsh words and behavior. Ellen added softly, "My work is to comfort him, to speak cheerful, loving words and soothe him. Despite all the pain inflicted, she chose forgiveness and compassion." This glimpse reveals that James acknowledged his fault in the quarrel and deeply regretted it. The healing was not just superficial, it went to the heart. By 1877, the Whites were closer than before, tempered by the trial they had passed through. In fact, observers noted that James became protective of Ellen's health and workload afterward. Yet, shadows of their clash lingered in subtle ways. James never fully forgot that feeling of being sidelined. In 1880, he frankly admitted to a colleague, "I undertake to do too much work. I love to work, and am inclined to take too much on my hands." He had a hard time letting go of leadership, which had been an issue in 1876. And tragically, he would not live many years longer to fully demonstrate the lessons learned. The 1876 episode was the most dramatic conflict between James and Ellen White, but it was not the only time they lived apart. In their final years together, practical necessity sometimes led them to minister in different places, a voluntary separation that nevertheless raised questions. By 1880, James, now in his late 50s, was in fragile health and semi-retirement, while Ellen's ministry was still vigorous. They mutually agreed that working separately at times could benefit the church. "This may be just as the Lord would have it, you doing your work and I doing my work here," Ellen wrote to James in early 1880. She reassured him, "Never doubt my love for you. But I find my duty calls me from you sometimes. My influence at times will be more favorable alone than if you are with me. We both may have to endure the trial of separation more than in the past." These words, penned by Ellen from California to James in Battle Creek, show a remarkable maturity and acceptance. Rather than viewing distance as a threat, she saw it as a trial they might have to bear for the sake of God's cause. Indeed, in 1880 and 1881 they often were apart. Ellen traveled out west and to distant states on speaking tours, while James stayed in Michigan, focusing on publishing work and recovering strength. This physical distance again stirred talk. Some who remembered 1876 wondered if the old rift had reopened. But the tone of their correspondence was different now. They wrote affectionate letters and clearly remained united in purpose. It was a strategic separation, not an emotional one. However, not everyone saw it that way. A close associate, Elder Dudley M. Canwright, later revealed that James harbored suspicions about other church leaders' influence on Ellen when she was away from him. In a candid letter to Canwright in May 1881, James complained that "Elders Butler and Haskell have had an influence over her that I hope to see broken. It has nearly ruined her." He even remarked privately, "You and Haskell have warped my wife's mind, and I am going home to take the warp out of it." These incendiary comments, reported by Canwright, suggest that James feared losing influence over Ellen, and perhaps old resentments from 1876 still lingered. Church President G. Butler, upon hearing of James's sudden death in August 1881, allegedly sighed that it was providential to save the church from a split. In Butler's view, the tension between James and the other leaders, with Ellen caught in the middle, had threatened to divide the young church. Such statements must be taken with caution. Canwright, who preserved them, was a disaffected critic writing years later, but they underscore that the Whites' marriage dynamics had real impact on the leadership circle. People were watching and talking. The spectre of 1876 still loomed in their memories.
So, did Ellen and James White secretly divorce? Absolutely not. Despite periods of estrangement and great emotional pain, their marriage endured until James's death in 1881. There was never any legal separation. But the historical record makes one thing clear. Their journey was not a fairy tale of uninterrupted harmony. They struggled, argued, and at one point lived on opposite sides of the country due to conflict. They were, after all, human. As devoted as they were to God and each other, they had to work through the same misunderstandings and personality clashes that beset many marriages, perhaps intensified by the enormous responsibilities they carried. What is remarkable is how they reconciled and grew through these trials. Their letters of apology and affection are as revealing as those of anger. I do not claim infallibility. I am not free from mistakes. Had I followed my Savior more closely, I should not have to mourn so much, Ellen wrote penitently in 1876, taking responsibility for her part in their troubles. James, for his part, humbly told his children in 1879, "Probably, I may have erred in some sharp things I have written. It is my nature to retaliate when pressed beyond measure. I wish I was a better man." These statements show a profound capacity for self-examination and change. The Whites did not let pride or bitterness destroy their union. Instead, they chose forgiveness. In the end, their bond proved stronger than the tensions. When James White died on August 6, 1881, Ellen was at his side. Her heartbroken tribute spoke volumes. "We have been united in labor for 36 years. I can lay my hands upon his eyes and say, 'I commit my treasure to thee until the morning of the resurrection.' I feel that he is the best man that ever trod shoe leather." In her grief, all the frustrations of the past were eclipsed by love and respect. The treasure she committed to God was her beloved husband of 3.5 decades. The story of Ellen and James White's marriage, racked by periods of distance but ultimately unbroken, offers a dramatic, humanizing glimpse of two spiritual leaders under pressure. It reminds us that even legendary figures can know private anguish. Their secret divorce never happened, but the struggles that gave rise to such rumors were very real. In a final sense, their marriage survived till death do us part, reforged by each conflict into a stronger unity. Did they secretly divorce? If anything, they privately confronted their differences, overcame them, and emerged with a testimony of love's triumph over misunderstanding. Such is the untold story behind the public persona of the Whites, a story of tears and reconciliation that can now be told in full, backed by the very letters they wrote from the depths of their hearts. Ellen and James White were pioneers not just in religion, but in navigating a marriage under extraordinary strain. Their legacy is not a scandal of secret divorce, but a powerful example of commitment. It's a story that makes these almost mythic figures feel real, a husband and wife who fought, forgave, and faithfully stayed the course together. If you made it this far, like, share, subscribe, and let me know what video you would like to see next. Catch you guys in the next one.